Welcome back, everyone. We're jumping right into today's explainer because we are looking at an epic of absolutely massive proportions. If you love a cinematic, sweeping story with intense character arcs, you are in the right place. We're talking about King Kausika, and this isn't your standard tale of conquering kingdoms or defeating rival armies. This is the story of our brutal, dramatic internal war. We're going to trace his evolution from an arrogant, unstoppable emperor to one of the most revered sages in history, Vishwamitra. And his ultimate, toughest battle? It was fought entirely against his own ego.
Okay, let's dive into this. There is no disease like greed, no enemy like anger, no sorrow greater than poverty, no happiness equal to wisdom. This powerful Sanskrit verse right here sets the moral framework for our protagonist's entire spiritual journey. It lays out the real stakes from day one. You see, King Kausika didn't suffer from a lack of wealth, and he certainly didn't lack military might. His terminal diseases were greed and anger. So as we go through this explainer, I want you to keep this specific verse in mind. It's essentially the roadmap for everything Kausika has to overcome to find any kind of true wisdom.
Section 1. The Proud King Kausika.
Based on the original Konkani texts documenting his life, Kausika was a mighty king born into the illustrious Chandravamsha dynasty. We're not talking about a minor local ruler here. This guy was a full-blown emperor who reigned for years. He had literally everything a person could worldly desire: a vast, sprawling kingdom, a huge family, and absolute unchecked authority. But as is so often the case, that level of immense power breeds an equally immense ego.
Just to give you a sense of that sheer power, picture this number, 21,870. One day, while out hunting, Kausika got exhausted and decided to stop by the peaceful forest hermitage of Sage Vashishta. But Kausika doesn't just knock on the door with a couple of bodyguards. No, he brings a massive army featuring exactly 21,870 chariots and 21,870 elephants. Just imagine the literal earthquake-level noise of all that materialistic wealth crashing into a quiet, spiritual forest.
Section 2. Defeated by Spiritual Power.
So, despite this incredibly noisy, massive army showing up unannounced, Sage Vashishta offers Kausika amazing hospitality. He actually feeds the entire army. How? Well, with the help of his divine, wish-granting cow, Nandini. But seeing this miraculous cow just makes Kausika's greed flare up instantly. He figures, hey, I'm the king, the best things in the world naturally belong to me. So he demands Nandini. When Vashishta politely refuses, explaining that the cow is essential for his spiritual duties, Kausika snaps and orders his soldiers to violently drag her away. His raw greed completely blinded him to any sense of respect, dharma, or basic decency. But Nandini is distressed, and she retaliates by unleashing a magical army of her own. In an absolute flash, Kausika's entire military might is completely decimated. And it gets even more tragic. When Kausika's sons try to attack Vashishta directly, the sage simply lets out a breath, a calm, focused release of spiritual energy, and the king's sons are instantly reduced to ashes. It's a staggering scene. Kausika's absolute physical power was utterly annihilated by Vashishta's quiet spiritual strength. This devastating, humiliating defeat forces Kausika to abandon his kingdom, retreat to the Himalayas, and begin 1,000 years of severe, transformative penance.
Section 3. The Trap of Jealousy.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide was the clear, distinct difference between these two titles. So, after 1,000 years of intense struggle, the creator god Brahma finally grants Kausika the title of Raja Rishi, meaning a king among sages. But Kausika is still deeply dissatisfied. Why? Because his rival, Vashishta, holds the ultimate title of Brahmarishi, the absolute highest sage. Kausika is still completely full of rajas, that is, energy, pride, and restlessness. He hasn't found supreme peace. He realizes he hasn't actually conquered himself at all. He's literally just traded his physical crown for a spiritual one, and he's still burning with intense envy over Vashishta's status.
And that envy leads to this wild, dramatic incident with King Trishanku. Trishanku had this bizarre, unnatural desire to enter heaven in his physical, earthly body. Sage Vashishta flat out refused to help him, but Trishanku went to Kausika. And Kausika, the moment he heard that Vashishta had said no, decided to help Trishanku purely out of spite. He uses his raw ascetic power to forcefully push Trishanku up toward heaven, but the gods push him right back down. So Kausika, in a furious, blinding rage, halts Trishanku in midair and literally begins creating an entirely new heaven and star system just for him.
It is a breathtaking display of sheer power, but it was driven entirely by toxic anger and jealousy. Section 4. Tests of Truth and Sacrifice. This brings us to his rigorous, almost cruel testing of King Harishchandra. Harishchandra had made a promise to sacrifice his son to the god Varuna, but he kept delaying it out of worldly attachment. Kausika steps in, now acting as this wrathful instrument of divine testing, and systematically strips away absolutely every single one of Harishchandra's worldly attachments to test his adherence to truth. He forces the king to give up his entire kingdom, leaving him totally destitute. He even forces him to sell his own wife and son into slavery just to pay off a debt to the sage. It's intense, it's relentless, and it really showcases Kausika's uncompromising, wrathful nature during this phase of his life. The climax of this test is just absolutely heartbreaking. Harishchandra is now working as a lowly, impoverished guard at a cremation ground. He's approached by a woman carrying a dead child. It turns out to be his own wife, Queen Chandramati, and their son, who has just died of a snakebite. Yet, even in the face of this horrific, unimaginable tragedy, Harishchandra refuses to break the rules of his job, demanding the cremation fee that his wife simply cannot pay. It's a staggering, devastating test of truth, and it highlights just how destructive and severe Kausika's wrath could be. He was pushing humanity to its absolute breaking point.
But right when we think Kausika is nothing but pure wrath, we finally get a glimmer of change in the story of a young boy named Sunassepha. When this boy was tied to a sacrificial pillar, terrified and crying out for help, Kausika's heart actually melted with compassion. He intervened, teaching the boy secret mantras to pray to the gods. The gods listened, and the boy's life was saved. Amidst all his fierce reputation, we're seeing Kausika's emerging compassion finally breaking through that thick armor of anger.
Section 5. Guiding the Divine Avatar.
And this brilliantly illustrates his massive transformation. Now fully embodying the name Vishwamitra, which means friend of the universe, he shifts gears entirely and begins guiding the young divine avatars, Lord Rama and Lakshmana. He takes them deep into the forest, not to conquer anything for himself, but to teach. He imparts incredibly powerful, secret mantras like Bala and Achabala to them, granting them unmatched strength and endurance. He is preparing them for their own ultimate destiny. He has finally stopped trying to be the center of the universe, and instead he stepped into the role of the ultimate mentor.
Let's just step back for a second and look at how this builds across his entire lifetime. When we map out the chronological scale of Kausika's evolution, it is staggering. He goes from his years as a hopelessly arrogant, conquering king to that humiliating, paradigm-shifting defeat at Vashishta's hermitage. Then we have those messy middle years, like the Trishanku incident, where he clearly has the power but entirely lacks the purity. Then comes his pivotal shift into teaching Lord Rama, leading to his final spiritual transformation. It is by no means a straight line. It is a long, brutal, cinematic struggle of internal change. Which brings us to the ultimate question of the whole explainer. Kausika had acquired unmatched power. He had thousands of years of penance. He had universal knowledge. He could literally create a new heaven out of thin air. But could he defeat his oldest, most stubborn enemies? His own anger and his own jealousy? Could he finally truly let go of his rivalry with Vashishta?
Section 6. Conquering the Inner Self.
Ultimately, yes, the heavy golden crown of his pride finally dissolves into light, and it's replaced by the simple wooden staff of true humility. Kausika realizes that to become a true Brahmarishi, he needs absolute purity, not just raw power. He needs total freedom from his own ego. And the final step to achieve this? He inwardly bows to his former rival, Vashishta. He completely lets go of the envy. He accepts his rightful place in the universe. And because of this, the creator Brahma finally appears and grants him the title of Brahmarishi, not because he angrily demanded it, but because he finally earned it through genuine inner peace. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly powerful thought. The highest victory is not ruling a kingdom, defeating an army, or creating a universe. The highest victory is conquering yourself. Kausika's epic journey is a brilliant reminder that no matter how much external success or power we manage to accumulate, our real, most difficult battles are always on the inside. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a question to reflect on. What inner armies of pride, anger, or jealousy might you need to conquer in your own life right now? Think about it. Thank you so much for joining me for this incredible story, and keep learning.